Myth number 1. You can track a vehicle in midair. Okay, to start off with, why? I mean, what's the point of tracking a tank in midair? Do you guys really think it will stand still in midair or something? Well, actually that would be pretty cool, and since World of Tanks keeps amazing me with their quotation marks realism, I wouldn't be surprised if that was really the case as well. But hey, a myth is a myth, you guys requested it, so my job is to test it and give you guys the answer. So luckily, this myth was fairly simple to set up. All we needed to do is take a couple of big tanks with easy to hit tracks, some tanks with insanely accurate guns, and of course the cliff diver map itself called Overlord. So now with the setup covered, let's test this myth out. So the sniper setup below the cliff, the tanks with the big track setup on top of the cliff. We damaged their tracks beforehand to increase the likeliness of destroying a track in one shot. And then we tried and tried and tried. And I gotta be honest, I completely underestimated the difficulty of tracking a vehicle in midair, since you have such little time to snipe the shot in. But after a couple failed attempts, we finally managed to track a tank in midair, and oh my god, can you believe it? The tank actually freezes in. No, it doesn't. As you expected, nothing special happened, the tank simply smacks down into the ground, killing itself with a broken track. So yeah, with that all done, let's jump right into the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, it isn't easy and the situation is very specific, but it is possible to track a tank in mid-air. Is it useful for anything? No, not really, but it's a cool fact to know about. But nevertheless, the results were pretty clear, so this myth is safely said confirmed. Myth number 2. You can make a vehicle completely blind. Okay, so this myth can be rather confusing, so allow me to further explain it to you guys. So most of you probably know the basics of the view range system in World of Tanks. In case you don't, there are simply two factors in the game that decide whether you can see an enemy vehicle or not. One factor being the view range, the other factor being the enemy's camo value. So in this myth we are basically gonna test out if it's possible for a tank not being able to spot an enemy vehicle up until the proxy spot range. So technically you can't be 100% unable to see an enemy vehicle up until you bump into it because of the proxy spot range. The proxy spot range is a small circle around your tank with a radius of 50 meters, and every single enemy that enters your proxy spot circle will be visible to you no matter how bad your view range is, or how good the enemy's camo value is. So with all that explained, let's find out how close you can get to the enemy vehicle without seeing it. So to successfully test this out, we needed a vehicle with an already extremely bad stock view range, in this case the Su-85, with an insanely poor view range of 280 meters. And secondly, we need a vehicle with an insane camo value, in this case the UE-57. And as an extra, to further decrease the Su-85's view range, I put a 25% trained commander in it, and I used a Panzer B2 to constantly damage my optics in game, and also some artillery to stun me in game for the smallest possible view range. And for the UE-57, as an extra, we used a camo net, camouflage paint and a 100% camo crew on it, giving it a total camo rating of 65%, which is completely nuts. And also to top it all off, it's gonna sit in a very thick bush in game as well. So with that all set up and ready to go, we went out to airfield where we tested this myth. So the UE-57 sets itself up in the bush, the B2 takes up my viewports, and now let's see how close I can get to this UE without spotting him. And it seems that we can't get any closer than 52 meters before the UE gets lit up, but that's still 2 meters away from the proxy spot range. So we try to further decrease the SU's view range with an anti-stun on top of it, but again we didn't manage to get closer than 52 meters. So I think we are pretty much done with the testing now, so now let's move on to the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, no matter how hard we tried, we simply couldn't get any closer to the UE than 52 meters without spotting him. Which makes me believe that the 50 meter proxy spot range on paper is actually 52 meters in game. But that still doesn't matter because the goal is reached, since we did manage to get to the proxy spot range without spotting the UE beforehand. So yes, you can make a tank completely blind up until the proxy spot range of course, and therefore it's pretty safe to say that this myth is confirmed. Myth number 3. Standard AP ammo is better than premium APCR ammo at a long range. So, sounds pretty simple to test, right? Ha, well wrong. This myth has to be one of the most fucking complicated pieces of shit I've ever figured out on this whole Mythbusters series. Why? Well, let me tell you. So I think most of you know that when you fire AP or APCR shells in World of Tanks, the penetration of those shells drop down increasingly the further the shell has to travel. By the way, in case you wonder, this does not count for HE, hash and heat ammo, since those shells are made from a completely different concept and don't get affected by range. But anyways, APCR shells are known for using a crap ton more penetration per 100 meters than AP shells. So that's why I was thinking, could it be possible that at a very long range AP shells have more penetration capacity left than APCR shells? So I thought, you know what, let's find it out. So I went to the World of Tanks forums to look up the penetration decrease percentage per 100 meters for AP and APCR shells, and most posts said the same, that AP shells have a 2% penetration decrease per 100 meters and that APCR shells have a 15.2% penetration decrease per 100 meters. So with those values, it's quite easy to calculate at what range AP would be more effective, right? Well, wrong, since the calculated values didn't make any sense whatsoever when tested in game. So we concluded that those percentages were complete utter bullshit. So we looked for another way to determine the penetration drop-offs for AP and APCR, and we figured out the following. When you hover over an AP or an APCR shell in a certain tank in the World of Tanks garage, it gives you the penetration value left at 100, 200 and 500 meters. And since Wargaming gives you 3 correct values, you can calculate a penetration drop-off formula for each shell type. And if you put those formulas in a graph together, you can exactly see at what range AP becomes better than APCR for that particular tank. As for example, this graph of the IS-7 shows here, with the y-axis being the penetration value in millimeters and the x-axis showing the range in meters. And with the blue line being AP ammo and the red line being APCR ammo. And this particular graph shows that at a range of approximately 900 meters, theoretically the AP pen should become better than the APCR pen. But here is where we ran into another obstacle, and that is the fact that any shell in World of Tanks will automatically disappear after it has traveled 720 meters, which means that it simply can't travel further than 720 meters. So if we were to set up an IS-7 and the target 720 meters apart, then in the IS-7's case the APCR ammo would still have more penetration left than the AP ammo. So to test this out with the IS-7 is, due to the shell travel limit, pretty much impossible. But we didn't give up there. So we went on and looked for other tanks that maybe have even worse APCR shells than the IS-7. So we repeated the creating of the graphs and formulas multiple more times for multiple more tanks, and a funny thing we noticed is that for some vehicles the AP and APCR formula was linear and for the others it was exponential. It basically was a complete mix and match sometimes. So I don't know how Wargaming makes up these formulas, but they really don't make any sense in my opinion. But anyways, after a couple tests we ended up with the tier 3 Russian premium tank, the T-45. And as you can see on the T-45's graph right here, the intersection points of its AP and APCR rounds already set at as close as 600 meters, which completely eliminates the maximum shell travel distance obstacle. So we could actually test this one out in game. So to set it up we needed obviously a T-45, a tank with an armor plate of about 25 to 30 millimeters thick according to the graph, in this case the Scorpion G's 30 millimeter thick front plate, and a measurement / spotter tank, in this case the RU-251. So we went out to a big and open map called Malinovka, and we used the RU-251 to measure out the distances in game. So at the T-45's view, the RU-251 was roughly 500 meters away from him, and at the Scorpion's view, the RU-251 was 215 meters away from him. So add that up together and you have a total distance of 715 meters in between the T-45 and the Scorpion. And according to the graph, this should be enough for that penetration difference to take effect. So after a couple of trial and error shots, because the maximum random range is 565 meters, after that you can't physically see the tank anymore, and obviously 715 meters is far beyond that. So we had to blind fire all the shots. So again, after a couple trial and error shots, the T-45 finally found the sweet spot on his aim, And to my surprise, it really starts to look like that indeed AP is more effective than APCR at this range. But you also have to keep in mind that there is an RNG factor in penetration as well, so some AP and APCR shots are stronger than other shots. But to get a more clear result, we tested it another time, but this time with the Panzer B2 as the shooter, because as you can see on its graph, the Panzer B2 actually has a much larger gap in between the AP and APCR pen at roughly 715 meters. And as the target, we went for the AMX CDC because its 30mm frontal plate is a bit less angled than the Scorpion's one, which should improve the test results. So we replicated the exact same experiment, so same distance, same position, and yes, look at this. This is a lot more accurate. As you can see, we get a good sequence of 4 clear pans with AP and 4 clear bounces with APCR. So I guess we are done with the testing here, so let's quickly move on to the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, who thought maths came out useful one day, since it helped a lot with uncovering this very complicated myth. And even though this is far from useful to actually keep in mind in random battles, since you're talking about distances of at least 600 meters for this to take effect. So in 99% of the cases, gold APCR ammo is always better than standard AP ammo. But the test results prove that it is indeed possible for standard AP to become more effective than premium APCR at a very extremely long range. So therefore I can safely say that this myth is confirmed. Myth number 4. The wind from a high altitude fall can extinguish a fire. To be honest, I'm pretty doubtful about this one, since water already can't extinguish a fire in this game, so why would a heavy breeze? But anyways, let's test it out. So this myth was actually pretty easy, so I just gathered a whole variety of tanks. We went to the highest drop I could think of, which was the glacier ship drop. Then we tried to set a tank on fire and let it drive off the ship. And after a couple of failed attempts, we finally managed to light a tank on fire. It drives off the ship, it falls down, and the fire keeps happily burning. So now with all the testing done, let's move on to the conclusion of this myth. So conclusion, apparently the only thing that can extinguish a fire in World of Tanks is a fire extinguisher, since submerging your tank underwater or falling down a massive ship doesn't seem to do the trick. So therefore I can safely say that this myth is busted. Bonus myth, you can survive a high altitude drop. So as the title already says, this is just a small bonus myth, since at the end of myth 4 we all crashed down the ship to end the game quickly, but there was one lucky RU-251 who managed to not lose a single hit point, which I found very interesting, since in a previous Mythbusters I tested if a tank's rack could break your fall. And that one got straight out busted. But in this clip, which the RU player kindly sent to me, you can see that the RU lands sideways onto a pile of wrecks without touching the ground, and he didn't lose a single hit point. So conclusion, I don't know if it's the fact that he fell sideways onto the wrecks, or if it's just pure luck, but the clip speaks for itself. Apparently it is possible to survive a high fall, so therefore I call this myth confirmed. So guys, that was all for today's Mythbusters episode, so I hope you enjoyed the video or found it useful. So if you did, please drop a like, I would highly appreciate it. Also, if you're new to the channel and you like my videos, make sure to smash that subscribe button so you will stay up to date with all my future content. And also, if you know any awesome myth that hasn't been tested out yet, feel free to drop it in the comment section down below, and who knows, you might see your myth appear in the next episode. But for now, all that's left for me to say is have an awesome day, and I'll catch you guys later.